Hi, everybody. Welcome to class. Um, I'm sitting outside. The sun is out, and yeah, there's a lot going on in my neighborhood. There's some trucks delivering stuff. You hear my wind chimes. There's some boys playing basketball. You know what that reminds me of? Life. And life is going on, and it's making me happy. I spent the morning packing sack lunches for school, realizing that I haven't nearly appreciated lunch ladies enough. It was a lot of work, and it felt great. So, if any of you are enjoying those lunches, these two hands, um, which have been washed incessantly. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. Today's lesson is going to be about the physical fighting of the war. Once the United States has entered, I just want to kind of acclimate you to what's going on. Um, really, some big names of people that are involved in the war. So I had a request from Danielle actually to include an outline. You guys just feel lost without your outline. So you may pause. If you're going to pause it where my face looks good. But pause if you want and write down this outline, and that'll help guide you. Of course, there'll be things I add in here and there, but hopefully that'll kind of guide what it is that you're writing. Ooh, it's a little chillier than I thought. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for that feedback, Danielle, and keep it coming, kids. I hope you're enjoying the start of the book, and I'll talk to you a little bit at the end of this presentation as to what comes next. Okay, so when last we spoke, we talked about the home front and the propaganda involved in getting the country mobilized to go from peace and neutrality to fighting a war. Now here we are at war. I wanted you guys to do all the stuff with the internment stuff, the article and activity that you did on the Japanese internment with the Manzanar reading. Hopefully, as you're getting into Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, you're realizing it's the idea of juxtaposing a primary source with a secondary fictional source. So that's my goal there. Part of what we did was make Americans really hate the enemy. And in order to and it's important to hate the enemy so that you can do the things that we're going to end up needing to do to win the war. So let's talk about some American leadership. When the United States enters the war, realize the war has already been going on for 2 years. As far as American leaders are concerned, of course, Franklin Roosevelt is the commander in chief. He's our president. He is going to work wonders in picking the right people for the right jobs. Much of being a leader and a president, whew, the wind chimes are kicking, sorry. Part of being a leader and a president is knowing who's best to get the best out of your people. And he does a wonderful job. So you've got Roosevelt as our president. Then you've got a guy by the name of, here's some quotes by Roosevelt that I love that you can kind of take a look at and read on your own. One of my favorite here is this generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. You'll hear me use that quote again if we continue in this, if we get back together, because there's a president that famously uses that quote, and that's Reagan. So it's interesting that those two different political leaders use the same quote. But Roosevelt is our commander in chief. He's got to sell the idea of war to the American people. Not a hard thing to do because Pearl Harbor was attacked, right? So one of the guys that he puts into place is going to be the guy on the left here. This is George Marshall. General George Marshall will be the leader of all the American troops. So he's the Army Chief of Staff is what he is. And he's going to be the guy that coordinates all the branches of the military and just the entire war effort, because realize we're going to be fighting in Japan. We're going to be, around Japan. We're going to be fighting in the Pacific because that's where we were attacked in Hawaii. But then there's also this big war raging in Europe. The United States is going to be involved on both fronts. Now, the guy on the right, I think you would recognize, you've all at least heard of him, General Dwight David Eisenhower. Ike, as you'll hear me call him a lot because we're BFFs. Dwight Eisenhower will be the head of all the Allied troops in Europe. So when the United States enters the war, we're coming in a little bit late, just like in World War I. So the military is already set up over there. The United States is going to come in, and we're going to have to be organized within the European military, within our allies. By 1944, so a few years into the war, we end up realizing that the Allies need one general that's going to govern everybody and coordinate everybody over in Europe. And that man will be Dwight Eisenhower. The fact that they pick an American to be the head of European troops, the European theater, is pretty impressive. It says a lot about Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower was beloved by the men who served under him. And he's going to be a wonderful motivator of men. And we'll talk tomorrow, well, maybe tomorrow, about his most impressive feat in doing that. Now, the strategy that we're going to have when the United States enters the war. So here's the world at war, right? We've got the Pacific, where war is being fought, and then we've got Europe. So Churchill has been praying that we will enter this war, knew that we would eventually enter on their side. And he says, listen, I know you're mad that Hawaii was attacked, but the fact is the most imminent and dangerous enemy that we have in the world today is, in fact, Adolf Hitler. He says, if Hitler is left alone, then all of your allies in Europe will fall and you're going to be on your own. So he convinces Roosevelt to agree to the following strategy. And that strategy is that the Allies will unify to defeat Hitler first. And then once Hitler is defeated, these European allies will jump into the war over here in the Pacific and help us defeat Japan. Now, that is not to say that we say, Japan, we're going to leave you alone for a few years. We're going to go fight in Europe. The United States sends military both places, but we agree that the other European troops aren't going to help us in Europe or in the Pacific until Hitler falls. Now, there are countries in the Pacific that are going to be helping us. You're going to have Australia. You're going to have the Kiwis down here in New Zealand. So there are others that are helping us fight Japan. But in Europe, we're going to be focused on getting rid of Hitler. And then everybody says they'll get together and help us defeat Japan. So that's the plan. Okay, that's your strategy. Ooh, bug. Well, and that takes us to Stalin. So one of the things that Hitler did that was so intelligent, you'll remember, well, anybody remember, what did Hitler do with Stalin? Anybody? Come on, wake up, Jake. Oh, you're right, Jake. That is true. He signed a non-aggression pact with Stalin. Ben, why was that important? Yes, so he didn't have to fight a two-front war. You guys are good. Okay, so he had made a pact and they had split Poland. Perfect. Okay, well, we all knew that probably wouldn't last. So last time we spoke, we said Hitler had tried to attack England in what was the name of that operation? Silas? Yes, Operation Sea Lion. And it failed. So when that failed, Hitler said, okay, I'm going to come back later and I will get England. But now I'm going to head east. So on June 22nd of 1941, Hitler invades the Soviet Union. He breaks the non-aggression pact. Here is Stalin. And here are some of Stalin's most famous sayings. Stalin says, death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. He says, I trust no one, not even myself. So why did he trust Hitler? You gotta wonder. One death is a tragedy. 1 million, a statistic. The only real power comes out of a long rifle. And when we hang the capitalists, they will sell us the rope we use. So when you read his quotes, he's not the best of men, maybe, right? Those aren't quotes that are going to make you vote for him in the United States. But what we decide is that Stalin is actually, at this point in history, the lesser of two evils. And when Hitler invades the Soviet Union surprisingly becomes an ally of England, France, the United States, and we start offering them aid. And so in what is going to be called Operation Barbarossa, Germany invades the Soviet Union on June 22nd of 1941. So a little bit before the United States enters the war. But remember, we had that Lend-Lease law. We lended and leased them resources and supplies to help them overcome the invasion by Germany. Hitler took Stalin by surprise. He said he trust no one, not even himself. Yet he was taken by surprise by Hitler. Hitler invades the Soviet Union and he starts moving into their most populated areas. What always seems to help the Soviet Union? Weather. Rain starts to slow the invasion of the Germans because they can't get their tanks to get solid footing on the roads because they're so muddy. Another tactic that the Soviets used is something called scorched earth policy. The Soviets would burn land and anything that would be of use to the invading Germans as they would retreat from an area. So when the Germans would get into an area that they thought they'd take over and maybe find resources in, they'd find everything destroyed. So while the Soviets were taken by surprise, they were able to slow that blitzkrieg of the Germans. And we all know that the one thing that the Soviets or the Russians always want to do is they want to try to slow their invader until old man winter can intervene. And ultimately, it will be winter that will help to really slow that invasion into the Soviet Union. But you can see here that Germany gets very deep into the Soviet Union. And actually, they eventually will get just outside of Moscow. But again, the winter will help push that back. All right. So now we have like this frenemy of Stalin and the United States once the United States enters the war. Another major operation once the United States enters is called Operation Torch. This is going to be the first Allied operation that the United States is going to be involved in on a large scale, and Eisenhower will be one of the men incrementally involved, not incrementally, can't remember the word I was going to use. The chimes are getting to me. That's going to get us, he's going to be very involved in this. So Operation Torch is the invasion of North Africa. And this is going to occur in November of 1942. So just under a year after the United States is bombed. So here you've got the United States. And if you're thinking, why on earth are we invading Africa? Why aren't we invading France and trying to get France back? That'll come later. We go down to Africa because here you've got just the tip here of Italy, who is part of the Central Powers and our enemy. And just over here is the Soviet Union. We know that we need the Soviet Union to have supplies to be strong so that they can force Hitler to fight a two-front war. A Soviet Union that survives helps everyone else to survive because then Germany has to fight over here. And then you've also got you've got Italy fighting down here. And then they're going to start worrying about us coming here. So really, by invading North Africa here, we're almost giving Hitler a three-front war, right? So in November of 1942, as part of Operation Torch, you've got combined forces of the United States and Britain who are going to land up here in Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers in North Africa. And what happens is the United States is going to land here, and then you're going to have the British troops under Bernard Montgomery, who are going to land in Algiers. And the goal is we're going to make them move towards each other. So the British are going to be here, the American troops are here, and they're going to march toward one another. George S. Patton is involved in this landing as well. And they march toward each other, and in the middle is Erwin Rommel. Erwin Rommel is the Desert Fox, is his nickname. He is the most decorated and most renowned of the German military leaders. He's excellent at his job and very well respected. And so he's going against these Allied troops in North Africa. So here you've got Monty, or Bernard Montgomery for the British. He lands in the east. And then you've got Patton that's going to land in the west. Patton has some wonderful, wonderful quotes. Americans love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle. Better to fight for something than to live for nothing. I think there's a country song with those words. Courage is fear holding on a minute longer. I don't measure a man's success by how high he climbs, but how high he bounces when he hits bottom. No bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. And if everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. He's an interesting guy. He thought he was reincarnated. He had a dog that he loved, loved, loved. He thought the most wonderful thing you could do would be to die for your country. He thought that people that dug holes in the earth during a battle called foxholes, you would dig into them and kind of use them as cover. He thought that was very cowardly. So when he would be on a battlefield and he would see them, he would urinate in the foxholes so that when someone jumped in it, they'd be covered in his pee. So he is like a man's man, a fighting man. And he is a wonderful tank leader. And he's often so wonderful that he moves ahead of his supply lines. He's also got quite a temper and is outspoken. He's one of those guys that speaks before he thinks. I can relate. And so he's an interesting soul. And oops, go back. In Operation Torch, we will have the Allies win a great success. They will, in fact, sandwich Rommel, and they will seize control of North Africa. A very big victory for the Allies here once the United States enters. And now, from Africa, the Allies can jump from Africa onto Sicily, this tiny little ball off the boot of Italy. And the goal is then to move up into Italy. Here we go, Silas. This is your favorite stuff. So, why would he do that? Why would we want to go up into Italy? Why is Italy so important? Olivia? Yes, they do have good pasta. You're right. We do like the pasta. Randy? Yes, pizza is also good. Anybody have a really good answer? Anyone? Okay, Emma, go ahead. No, that's not right. Who's McGarity? Why? McGarity is right, because if we fight in Italy, now Germany is going to have to send troops down there, also to the Soviet Union, and also to the West. So we'll split them. Front war, right? So what's going to happen is Montgomery and Patton will land on Sicily, and they will encircle it. They will race to the tip of it and then jump up the boot of Italy. That's the goal. And we land on Sicily, and man, we encircle it quickly. As a matter of fact, Patton moves way ahead of Montgomery, and he's pretty proud of that. And then we jump to the boot of Italy. Well, here's the thing. The Italians had grown weary of the war. They felt that Mussolini had engaged them in a war where they were fighting for the wrong things, that their young men were dying in huge numbers and they didn't know what they were dying for. So there was a group of Italians called the partisans that were starting to kind of overthrow and start a rumbling rebel movement within the Italian state. And so Hitler heard these disgruntled masses, and he got worried. So he's actually going to send troops down into Italy to grab Mussolini and put him in hiding, because he thought the partisans might kidnap him and try to kick him out of office. So he's going to go into hiding, not with his wife, but with his mistress. The Italians, they're lovers, not fighters. And so at this point, you find that there will still be those that are loyal to Mussolini and the war cause, but you're going to find Italy very torn and divided here. And really, by the end of the war, the Italians are going to be seen more as allies than really central powers. Italy is really good at switching sides and ending up on the winning side at the end of a war. Right, Silas? So here, as Montgomery and Patton move up the boot of Italy, Germany sends troops into Italy along with the Italian troops, and there they are going to stop the Allied advance for about 18 months. Now, this sounds like, oh, shoot, we were going to take Italy. It's okay, because now Germany and Italy are focused on maintaining some control here in Italy. So they're busy. They're also busy in the Soviet Union, which means they are going to not be able to focus entirely on this western border here, on this western coast of France. And that is ultimately our biggest goal. So for the first 2 years the United States is in the war, we are planning an invasion of France who fell within the first year of the war. So our goal here is to somehow get troops from England across the pond into France so that we could march towards Germany, so the Soviet Union could march towards Germany, so maybe we could come up through Italy. So this is our plan. The last piece is to try to land troops on the beaches of France. And that will be what we'll talk about in our next lecture. So I would say, are there any questions? But if there are, I guess you're just going to have to send me a hangout. I'm hoping this vehicle of Screencastify is helping kind of move your content knowledge forward a little bit. Today you're supposed, yeah, today's Wednesday, I guess. So, I record these a day before, maybe 2 days before. Anyway, on Wednesday, you're supposed to be reading the first 18 pages of Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. It is an easy read. I swear to you, of all the books you requested to read in my class and McGarrity's class, it is the easiest. Randy will tell you it's a good book. Keep up with it. I'm going to give you small 20-page chunks. I want you all to start a Google Doc, and I said in the directions, entitle it, Hotel Journal, and I'm going to give you prompts periodically throughout your reading that you're just going to keep up with, and then I'll just keep checking on it. Once you turn it in once on Google Classroom, it'll keep updating for me. So that shouldn't be a problem. If I find somehow that doesn't work, which would blow my mind because it's worked before, I'll let you know. But I'm hoping to do some kind of a conversation, maybe through Zoom or something, about the book at some point. I will tell you there'll be like a little project you're going to do with the book, and that's it. So I hope everyone is doing well. Please go outside and enjoy the weather. I hope you haven't felt like you've been overloaded. I feel like I haven't been giving you a ton of stuff, and I hope all of your teachers have been measuring it out nicely for you. So I hope I see all of you guys soon. Please, warm weather, kill the germs, and let's get back to normal. Take care, everybody. Let me know if you need anything. Bye-bye.